Now I'd like to invite here Victoria Baker from the United Kingdom, please. She represents Newswise project, right? So Victoria, floor is yours.
So I'm one of the program managers for Newswise, and Newswise is the first free UK news literacy program for 9 to 11-year-olds. We are a partnership between the National Literacy Trust, the Guardian Foundation, and the PSHE Association. It's a bit of a mouthful. And we receive funding from google.org, which means that everything that we do is free for all schools in the UK. To do this, our aim is to create a generation of news literate young people. And to do this, we work with schools, communities, children, their families, and teachers. We create lessons and resources for teachers to deliver news literacy projects in the classroom. We train teachers on what effective news literacy education looks like. We run workshops for children and their families, and we help to connect journalists with schools. So we help children to become fake news detectives, but we don't just cover disinformation. We also support young children's understanding of the news. So what is news? Why is it important? How is it produced? We also work with children to help them identify bias, opinion, rumour and speculation. And we teach them how they can use news skills to have a voice in their own communities and share their own true stories in a fair and balanced way. So we have 4 key underlying principles. Firstly, we want children to engage with and enjoy the news. We want them to take pleasure in understanding their world. That's the foundation of everything. From there, we want them to have the critical thinking skills to question everything that they see, hear and read in the news, in the same way that they're taught to critically question poetry and literature in the classroom. And we want children to be empowered to have a voice in their own communities. But what's most important is that we recognise that some schools in the UK are facing particular challenges. So we target our face-to-face work with children in the hardest to reach communities. So those facing social, economic deprivation, digital poverty, and those communities that are traditionally underrepresented by mainstream media. So why do we want to do this? Well, we know that fake news is a real problem. It's definitely not a joke. Research in 2018 from the National Literacy Trust found that only 2% of children have the critical literacy skills that they need to identify a fake news story. But helping children to become fake news detectives, you have to be fun, authentic and relevant. So I'm going to show you some of the ways that Newswise achieves this. So firstly, authenticity is key. Children need to see the purpose in their learning in order to be motivated, engaged to learn in the first place. So we ensure that all of our lessons are embedded in the real life skills of the newsroom. So when children are learning to edit their work, they're not just doing it because the teacher has told them to do it or because they need to tick a few boxes. It's because it's a real job. It's what sub-editors do in the newsroom to produce good quality journalism. We also ensure that all of our content is created in collaboration with specialist teachers, news literacy experts, and journalists. We use real newsroom vocabulary throughout everything, and we have an online glossary for teachers that they can refer to. We film videos of journalists talking about their jobs and the skills involved so that children can begin to understand the many roles that's required in news production. But we also send journalists into schools because children want to meet them in person and they have thousands of questions. So the children can actually ask the journalists the questions they want to, but the journalists also give the children feedback on the work that they have produced. And the children find that very inspiring. But we also help teachers to turn their classrooms into newsrooms. So we have teachers creating press passes for their children that they have to scan when they come into their classrooms. We have children taking on different roles, working in editorial teams, meeting tight deadlines, and all of this takes place in the context of journalist training school. So children go on a journey, they learn all of the skills required to be journalists, and at the end, they can graduate as journalists. So behind me, we have a school here in the corner who took part in Newswise, and the children are there at their graduation ceremony. They made their own mortarboards. They went to a carpet shop down the road and borrowed a red carpet. They invited their parents in and did fake news quizzes for their parents. And they also had a journalist who's hiding at the back, and he gave them certificates that were signed by the chief editor of The Guardian. So we're doing all of this to make the process of news production more transparent. We also use real news stories with the children. We don't make anything up. We know that children are accessing news all the time, and they need the space to discuss it. So yes, we do use fun, light-hearted animal stories, but we also give them the chance to discuss real news about real people and issues of social justice. One of the lessons we have is on holding power to account and how the media has a role in that. And we use the example of the Windrush scandal in the UK. Teachers describe their students sitting a little taller in their seats, really stepping up to the opportunity to discuss an issue that was previously closed to them. And one teacher even told us that she saw the children really becoming citizens in front of her eyes. When we look at fake news, we also use genuine examples with the children. We find examples that are age appropriate, and we use that to look at all the different ways that information can be manipulated. But we don't just get the children reading real news, we also get them writing news. Because to be a critical consumer, you also have to have had the chance to produce something yourself to really understand the process that goes on behind it. So the children identify newsworthy stories from within their communities. They do their own research, they do their own risk assessments, they conduct their own interviews, they use authentic language and structures to report their stories from local issues and events that are happening in their school to their own unique angle on international and national topics. This really empowers the children to have a voice and shows them that their voices are just as important as everybody else's. To make it even more powerful, we help teachers to give their pupils a real audience. So we show teachers how they can turn their children's writing into actual newspapers, but we also publish children's reports on our website so that the children can see their work online. Perhaps most importantly for the children, we make it fun. So we tell them, right, today you're going to be fake news detectives, you're going to get your hats on, your magnifying glasses out, but what we really mean is you're going to be developing your critical thinking skills. We create games and activities without losing the seriousness of the situation or the impact of the learning. So children love doing fake or real quizzes. There's a class at the bottom there doing one. They love learning to be fake news detectives using iPads and QR codes, looking at and investigating the original source of information, checking the coverage online. They also explore the consequences of fake news through activities such as mock elections. But it's not just about fake news. They also learn to sort the fact from the fiction. So children explore tweets and social media posts about breaking news stories, and they work to identify which statements are opinions, rumors, speculations, in order to uncover the truth. They take part in press conferences to understand the importance of balanced reporting and including a range of opinions in your reports, regardless of your own opinion. And children really love bright and colourful resources. So this is our news navigator, and it gives the children a set of clues that they can use when looking at fake news. Children also take it home, and they use it with their families to begin to open up the discussions about news at home as well. Finally, we ensure that what we do is relevant. So we always use current news stories with the children, stories that we know they are curious about, stories that we know they can form their own opinions on and discuss in class. But we also make sure that it is relevant for the teachers too. So everything we do is closely mapped to the curriculum. And we heard earlier about how media literacy isn't its own topic in the curriculum. However, we show teachers that by teaching the news in this way, you are addressing many areas of the curriculum. So in English, you're covering your core writing skills, reading comprehension, you're developing your critical thinking. And in PSHE, which in the UK stands for Personal, Social, Health and Economic Education, children explore their well-being. So they think about, how does news make me feel? And if I'm engaging more with the news, how do I manage my emotions when I'm reading these stories? And in terms of online relationships, we also have a lesson on filter bubbles and targeted information. And yes, we believe that 9 and 10-year-olds can absolutely learn this. Okay, so the key to everything that we do and everything we have done over the past year and a half is suspense. That's the wrong slide. You've skipped one. How do we go back? There we go. Is evaluation. So we have constantly adapted everything that we do. Everything is constantly changing. And our feedback shows us that it is working. So children and teachers completed baseline surveys, interviews and assessments. They also did surveys after workshops and then again at the end of the project. And it showed us that there was a real high level of impact on children's attitudes, behaviours in terms of news consumption. But perhaps what the most exciting thing for us is that children were just more excited and interested about the news after doing this. And that's the foundation of everything. It also had a brilliant impact on teachers. So after training, teachers felt more confident to deliver this kind of work in their classrooms. And so many teachers reported that because of Newswise, the children were engaged, excited, and energetic in the classroom. And to help us scale the project and make it even bigger in the UK, we have recruited volunteer teachers who work all around the country, and they help promote the project to other teachers and train other teachers in their networks. So, what's next for Newswise? We want to have more teachers on board, so more volunteer teacher champions. We are going to continue to bring an audience to children's voices by publishing their reports online. And excitingly, we are now developing brand new resources for even younger children, so 7 to 8-year-olds, and we will be using our Teacher Champion network to pilot and test these resources and get genuine feedback from the classroom. We are also taking our family workshops on tour, so we are hoping to reach even more families and children around the country. Okay, so I want to conclude with saying, I think it's fair to say that we learned a lot over the past year and a half. You need to be prepared to change everything and really make sure that you're listening to the teachers and children that are involved in your project. Children can be the harshest critics. However, when you get it right, they can also be your biggest champions. So our advice to other projects is to be pragmatic. You need to build it, test it, but be prepared to rebuild it again, and always put the children or your participants, whoever they may be, at the heart of what you do. Thanks very much.